Hello everyone, my name is Resonator Raven, and in this video, I will discuss what I consider to be the biggest problem with echoes in Wuthering Waves. To start off, I always thought echoes were fine for what they were. I didn't really think that there was anything wrong with them compared to other gearing systems, but for some reason, I felt like they were lacking. After some thought, this was the conclusion I came to. Echoes are being wasted. They could be used for so much more than RNG stat sticks with some buffs attached to them. Just because something works, it doesn't mean it can't be improved upon. So, how are echoes being wasted, and how can we unlock their potential? As of right now, there are 114 echoes split among 1, 3, and 4 costs. Out of these vast choices, you will only ever see these equipped in the main slot for combat, with a vast majority being 4 costs. And a side note, not all 4 costs are even being used here, because there are just better echoes. So, that's 22 echoes if we're being quite generous and assuming you have all the resonators that use them. Additionally, the only outlier to this is a single 3 cost for the Zani and Peeb teams, and maybe the Cyan Feathered Heron for disrupting hologram special skills. And as for using 1 costs in the main slot, I can only think of Whiff Waff and Zigzag for grouping and stagnation respectively in Whimpering Wastes, which aren't even needed if you have at least some grouping or AoE. That's a grand total of 25 usable echoes out of a roster of over 114. So when I put that 80% of echoes have 0 use cases for their special abilities to be used, I wasn't joking. This right here screams of wasted potential. Now, how can this be fixed? Honestly, just make it so that any equipped echoes are utilized in at least one way. What I'm suggesting is something along the following. The main slot can stay the same. You activate it in battle and it does its thing. Now, as for the second and third slots, these echoes would either be something that you transform into or be summoned when you use an intro skill. Both slots 2 and 3 would scale with intro skill level, so that leveling intro skills would actually be useful. While the 4th and 5th slots would be used for things like passive effects, and these echoes would probably spawn every couple seconds. Oh, and this would probably require making echoes be both transformable and summonable. So, let's use my Spectral Rover for an example. Currently he has a Nightmare Morning Aches, a Vitrium Dancer, a Capitanius, a Fey Ignis, and finally a Golden June Rock. When he intro skills in, he would appear on field as the Vitrium Dancer, while simultaneously summoning the Capitanius. And while Rover is on the field, both the Fey Ignis and the Golden June Rock would spawn every 5 seconds and do one of their special moves. This would make all echoes equipped on your resonator much more valuable, and not just the one in the main slot. For example, now that each attribute has its own Drake, they can make it so that those echoes apply the corresponding negative status effects. Another example could be these echoes giving an overworld buff. Like if you were to have a cruise wing equipped, you would get something like an extra dodge. Not only would this reward you for gathering echoes, but it would also reward you for experimenting with various builds and trying to find the best combination of echoes to go with. And these are just some initial ideas I had while writing this script. The possibilities for this could literally be endless. Let me be honest, data merging is straight up trash. Merge echoes with a wrong main stats to possibly get one with the right main stat and in the Sonata set that I need? Nah, I don't need more gambling in a gacha game. So let's make it so that data merging is actually useful. The first option is making it so that we can choose which Sonata sets we get from merging. Now, the best way to show this off is actually in another gacha game, Zenless Zone 0. Now, I know ZZZ has its own issues, I guess, but this is one thing that ZZZ gets right. The Bardic Needle is a shop where you can dismantle bad or unleveled discs for hi-fi master copies. This material can then be used to make more discs in the correct disc set using track settings, which is basically the equivalent of choosing a Sonata set. So if we replace discs and their disc sets with echoes and Sonata sets respectively, and get rid of the conversion materials, WuWa already converts at a 5:1 ratio, we get useful data merging. Not to mention, this would also be a godsend for farming new Sonata sets. Instead of farming for countless hours on the new tacit fields, we could just use our old useless echoes and convert them into usable pieces. This would make farming for decent echoes so much more easier, especially keeping in mind the fact that we have modifiers that can help us with getting the correct main stat. And yes, I know that there is a weekly mode that you could do for pre-farming, but it takes 10 minutes to complete. Also, this mode drops 2 Sonata sets, meaning that some of those echoes won't be useful, but with my suggestion, you could convert them over to the correct set. The next option could be something along the lines of what Black Beacon has implemented. Black Beacon's gearing system is basically getting 2 ancient marks of the same shape and rarity to merge them into one of a higher rarity, combining them and their attributes into one piece. But if they have the same substat, they will not be able to merge. Now, it's not an exact one-to-one, but we could take the base of the system and integrate it into WuWa's echoes. The shapes being the different types of echoes and main stats, and the attributes being the echo's substats. This would mean that you have to have an echo of the same type and main stat to merge them. So when you merge 2 leveled up green echoes, you would end up with the substats of both and get a blue rarity echo when you upgrade it. The key difference here is that if you have 2 substats that are the same, it will be leveled up. As in, if you have a 6.3 crit rate roll, it would go up to a 6.9. And you would have to tune it for the next level because you got the same substat. Not only would this make early game echoes useful for more than just fodder for other echoes, but it would also help with getting better echoes overall. Now, I'm no UI guy, but I do have some basic experience with making them. And let's just say the UI for echoes could be improved upon. My biggest nitpick with the Echo UI is the fact that you cannot immediately discard the Echo for XP and tuners. If you want to do that, you have to go back to the backpack menu. Like, why? It would be so much more intuitive if the trash feature, not to be confused with the discard feature, were also where you upgraded them. And yes, before we go on, you can feed them to other echoes, but that ends up over-leveling them, and you end up spending extra shell credits that you don't have to. Oh, and speaking of the upgrade section, why are there 2 separate menus for leveling and tuning? For 99% of cases, you will tune the echoes that you level, unless it's something like a healer or moonlit set. Even then, you could just add a button off to the side that says tune. Also, as a small side thought, leveling echoes shouldn't cost shell credits and echo XP. Like, I already have the XP to level them. Why do I also need to use shell credits to complete the upgrade? The same thing goes for tuning. But to continue on, another feature I would like to see is being able to convert Echo XP to tuners and vice versa. We can already do this with synthesis conversion to upgrade mats at a 2-to-1 rate, so why not these mats as well? Now, the last way Kuro could improve the Echo upgrading process is by giving us a substat selector and reroller. These ones are fairly straightforward. The selector will let us choose which substat we get next, while the reroller would give us another chance of getting a better substat on an echo that we have already rolled. Now to quickfire some other ideas. Shiny echoes should have been chance-based instead of guaranteed. Like imagine exploring Huanglong or the Black Shores and randomly finding a shiny echo. Naturally, it would have a special effect, like a guaranteed max substat or something. We should be able to give echoes nicknames and see the day we got them, kind of like Pokemon Go. Echoes should be able to be locked and discarded when they drop. And finally, we need better in-game tracking of echoes, for example, giving us optimal farming routes. At the end of the day, these are just my opinions on what they could do to improve echoes, and that basically wraps up my thoughts about them. So with that in mind, do you agree or disagree with my suggestions? Also, what would y'all like to see next? This is my first video and I plan on making more. If you have any ideas or feedback, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Also, if you liked this video and want to see more, I would appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. Anyways, see you next time.